Everyone.
Good afternoon.
I would like to welcome all participants online to this day 4 of PAFA Sustainability Week. My name is Evelyn Wapasa. I'm director at PAFA, responsible for effective professional accountants organizations, including accountancy education. I'm anchoring the session this afternoon, and just one housekeeping issue, or maybe a few. One is that this session is being recorded. We therefore request that you take note that the session is being recorded. 2, we would like to bring to your attention that there is interpretation available. If you look at your panel, there is a globe on the bottom of your screen. If you click on it, you will get options whether to listen in English or French. So for those that would like to listen in French, please click in French, and those that would like to listen in English, please click English. In the next 2 minutes, I'll be calling on the session to formally start. I'll just take a minute to allow everybody to set up, to choose your interpretation, English or French, and also to let you know that the questions will have to be submitted by writing into the chat or into the question and answer. So that is the way we're going to proceed. In the next 1 minute, I'll officially commence the session. Thank you. Once again, I would like to now call this session to order. You are all welcome, participants online, speakers online. You are all welcome to day 4 of PAFA Sustainability Week. This is day 4, and the overall theme of the week is Pathways to Prosperity, Advancing Sustainable Development in Africa. That's the theme for the week. But as I said before, the session today is focused on accountancy education, or learning and development as we call it. And the title for today is Mainstreaming Sustainability in Learning and Development. I'm your anchor, and I'll just repeat one instruction. We have interpretation online. If you click the globe on your panel, you'll be able to choose whether you want to speak or you want to listen in French or English. As your anchor, my first duty is to call the first speaker, who will deliver opening remarks, who is chairman of the Accountancy Learning and Development Technical Advisory Group for PAFA, Professor Rashid Small. Professor, are you online? Okay,
Evelyn, we had the challenge, of course, with Professor Rashid being involved in the SAIPA in Durban, right? And
Okay.
so we knew that we're running the risk that he might not be in time for his opening remarks. So I'm his backup. So I'm sitting here in the blocks. You can call when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Atta. So in the chairman of the technical advisory group is not available as we've been advised, but we are privileged to have the chief executive officer of PAFA, Atta Plenislo, who is filling in those big shoes. And Atta, may I call you to deliver the opening remarks for today's session? Over to you.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. And it's the second time this week I am filling big shoes. First, we had Yakuba, who is chairing our Public Value Management Technical Advisory Group, not able to join us. And as I already explained, Prof. Small, who chairs our Accountancy Learning and Development Advisory Group, is also engaged today in the SAIPA Indaba, their annual big event. And I knew that there was a chance that he was not going to be able to break away to be here. So I'm going to speak on his behalf. And as I said, as Evelyn already said, really big shoes to fill. I'll do my best. And again, I want to just repeat what Evelyn said. Let's chat in the chat and let's ask questions in the questions and answers function, because that helps us to allocate the questions and be as efficient and effective as possible. So ladies and gentlemen, I am welcoming you to the fourth and last day of PAFA's Virtual Sustainability Week for 2023. Evelyn already reminded you, our theme is Pathways to Prosperity, Advancing Sustainable Development in Africa. And of course, today we are focusing on accountancy education, and the sub-theme is Mainstreaming Sustainability in Learning and Development. In December 2022, PAFA issued a call on all professional accountancy organizations in Africa to adopt strategies that support professional accountants for people, planet, and prosperity. The call had 4 areas of focus, including number 1, sustainability reporting and assurance. In the same year, we collaborated with ACCA and PwC on a study on the state of the accountancy profession in Africa. This study revealed that professional accountants across Africa are less optimistic about their contribution to reports on the impact of business activities on the environment and society. A key factor for this lack of confidence appears to be their limited understanding of ESG, or environmental, social, and governance.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you. Because the next speaker on our program is Bruce Vivian, the head of accountancy education at International Federation of Accountants. Bruce, you would have been properly introduced the subject after Art had spoken, but I'm sorry that will rush you in to fill in the gap, and we appreciate that you have come in. We'll still we'll still talk about the objective of this session after you have spoken. Thank you. Over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Evelyn. And thank you to Alta for the comments that were probably made as without her realizing she was frozen. Really appreciate this opportunity to engage with the PAFA community on this important topic. I think, reflecting from an IFAC perspective, we've done a lot over the past couple of years to advocate firstly, for the establishment of the International Sustainability Standards Board under the IFRS Foundation, and then to encourage the adoption of the new S1 and S2 around the world. And we obviously are also supporting the work that the IAASB is doing on ISSA 5000 on sustainability assurance. And so the standards are in place, but the next important thing we need to be thinking about across the profession is what the implications are for accountancy education and how we're going to build capacity to be able to implement these standards. And so I'm grateful for this opportunity to tell you a little bit about what we're doing at IFAC in this space, and we're very much in an outreach phase, so this is good timing for us.
Bruce?
Yep.
Atta is back, and maybe you can give her the chance because her speech will introduce you.
No problem. Let me step back.
Thank you. Yeah.
So thank you so much, Evelyn. And I am going to suggest no camera because I'm on my phone, because in the office we lost Wi-Fi. It almost never happens until we have a continental webinar. So let me continue faceless, but not pointless. So I will be talking about PAFA's request to professional accountancy organizations to assist professional accountants to demonstrate sustainability-related skills and competencies, ensuring they continue to expand the value-added services they can offer in the future. And PAFA further recommended the following 3 specific actions: positioning professional accountants as best placed to meet the sustainability-related needs of reporting entities, including assurance services. Integrating new ESG subject matter with the foundational skills and competencies, professional judgment, and integrity of professional accountants. And thirdly, providing support, education, and technical guidance that promote high-quality reporting and assurance of sustainability information, enhancing the role of professional accountants as valued partners and advisors. So, gathering here today is to share ideas on what actions should be undertaken so that the accountancy education support professional accountants to demonstrate sustainability-related skills and competencies. We are very privileged this year that IFAC, our Global Accountancy Education Standard Setter, has initiated a sustainability-related project driven by the overall focus on professional competence and the evolution of the technical competence, professional skills, professional values, ethics and attitudes, and practical experience needed by professional accountants to enable them to perform a role as part of sustainability-related reporting and related assurance services. In that regard, IFAC is reaching out to Africa this afternoon to hear your thoughts, on what new knowledge, skills, and behaviors need to be developed or have more emphasis placed on them in aspiring and professional accountants to enable them to deliver quality sustainability-related reporting and assurance. We have an opportunity this afternoon to influence global accountancy education, supporting reliable and relevant decision-useful sustainability-related reporting and assurance. In the 2.5 hours ahead of us, let us share our valued experiences, expertise, and ideas. We have Bruce Vivian, Head of Accountancy Education at IFAC. He will deliver, or actually already started to deliver, his statement, sharing background information to our discussion this afternoon. We will also have a panel with a panel of experts in the accountancy education space. They are from Kenya, Nigeria, and South Africa, and they will lead with their thoughts on where we are and what we need as we go forward to support competence and skills for sustainability-related reporting and assurance. Finally, and most importantly, there will be a question and answer session where all participants are requested to share their views. And again, really encouraging you to use the question and answer function as we go along this afternoon. Please take note that the output of this session will be our collective contribution from Africa to IFAC towards influencing the future of global accountancy education to support sustainability reporting and assurance. So, without further ado, I trust that we will have fruitful deliberations this afternoon, and I'm handing over again to you, Bruce. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alta, and really thank you for emphasizing the importance of the community contributing today. This is definitely one of those webinars where we would like you to be engaged and providing your inputs and perspectives. So as Alta has mentioned, we have this project now that has been initiated under our International Panel on Accountancy Education, which we call our Sustainability Reporting Project. And really fundamentally what we're asking is do we need to make revisions to the international education standards in response to sustainability reporting and assurance? And when I say sustainability reporting and assurance, it's not just the reporting and the assurance, but everything that comes before and everything that comes after. What do I mean by that? Well, everything that comes before means everything around governance, identifying sustainability-related risks and opportunities, putting in place processes, systems of internal control to gather data, and the whole process to manage that information and eventually get it into the reporting, and then get it assured, and then ensure that it's actually used for decision making, which is what comes after. So it's the whole cycle, the whole section, but it's with the real the trigger for us doing this is around the new standards that have been issued by the ISSB, as well as the exposure draft that is out currently from the IAASB. So just a quick reminder about what the education standards are, because I'm conscious that although probably most of you in the room have at least heard of them if you're involved in the profession, they're not always the most publicly known standards. These standards, the international education standards, provide a global baseline for accountancy education for IFAC member organizations. So they are written for IFAC members, for the PAOs around the world. And what they do is that they define this global baseline, and that's done through a framework that describes the different components of a professional qualification. So as you see on the screen, entry requirements, practical experience, assessment are things that should be present in any professional qualification. And then, of course, anybody who is a qualified professional accountant needs to be committed to lifelong learning in the form of continuous professional development. But then within that framework, we have this, what we describe as our learning outcomes based approach. So we ask members to adopt a learning outcomes based approach to initial professional development. And in the standards, particularly in IES 2, 3, and 4, we codify learning outcomes that should be in all accountancy qualifications. We also have IES 8, which is more of a specialized set of learning outcomes for audit engagement partners. So I just give you this context because as we are thinking about what we are going to do in response to these new sustainability reporting and assurance standards, what we really are asking is are these learning outcomes that we have in our standards sufficient to ensure that a professional accountant is able to deliver quality sustainability related services? Or do we need to make revisions? So right now at this point, we are at the phase where we are just actually concluding our outreach over the next day or so. And at the end of this month, the education panel at IFAC will be making a decision around the way forward. Are we going to revise standards? Are we going to develop additional guidance to support the community? What is it that is needed? So more to come on that soon, but at this point, we want to understand your perspectives on this issue. And so I'm going to share our initial thoughts around what the impact could be on education, and then going to obviously invite you later on when we get into the Q&A to provide your perspectives, to critique what I've said, and to add your own perspectives. So as we go through this, as we're going through this project, we've realized that we've got to come at this from different angles, or what I describe here as different competency lenses. So it's really important that we are thinking both about the competencies required of preparers as well as auditors. We want to be thinking about what competency looks like for an aspiring professional accountant, somebody who's a student, who's currently in the initial professional development phase, versus what about those qualified professional accountants, those who qualified perhaps 10, 15, 20 or more years ago. What are the competencies that they might need to develop to be effective in this work? We've got to think about if there's a difference between the core competence, which is what everyone requires. So is there a base level of competence in sustainability that every professional accountant needs? And then is there a more specialized level that only some will require? Finally, we need to think about what this looks like for large firms and corporates versus what it might look like from a competency perspective in SMPs and SMEs. What we hear is that while the SME community, it may not be mandatory anytime soon or ever for them to report, provide sustainability disclosures, what we know is that if they are in the supply chain of large corporates, or if they are trying to get finance from banks, it is quite likely that they will be asked to provide some level of information. So what are the competencies like to make sure that you are able to collect and report that information? As we've been going through this project and this outreach, we've been using a framework to talk about the competencies of the professional accountant. And in this framework, we ask two questions. Firstly, what hasn't changed? And secondly, what's new? What hasn't changed is the competencies that a professional accountant already has, which are transferable to sustainability-related services. So we believe at IFAC that accountants are well-placed and are best placed to do this type of work. And that's because of the solid foundation that we already have. So we are trying to understand what hasn't changed, what in that competency set is transferable. But what's new? We know that we don't know everything yet. There is some stuff we need to learn. So we're trying to understand what that is. What's new? Where will the accountant need to develop themselves to make them effective in delivering this type of work? Now, as we apply this framework, we apply it to 4 focus areas: business acumen, behavioral competence, technical expertise, and ethical behavior, which give us useful buckets to have the conversation and make sure that we're considering all elements. So over the next 4 slides, I'm going to give you just some examples of how we are applying this framework and how you might want to think about this as you reflect on your own thoughts on what hasn't changed and what's new. The 4 slides I'm going to share are not exhaustive. I'm not attempting to cover everything in these slides, but it's just examples to show you how we apply this to these 4 different areas. The first up, business acumen. What hasn't changed? Well, we know that professional accountants are really excellent at understanding and evaluating business models, at understanding regulatory, industry, and other external factors. We evaluate the impact of strategic business decisions, and we develop or evaluate an entity's response to risk. None of this is new. We already do this. But what's new? Well, the breadth and the depth of understanding of governance, strategy, and risk issues has increased. Suddenly, all the sustainability elements, the effect of climate on the organization, the importance of considering social issues, and so on, these are becoming a part, need to come under the umbrella of governance, of strategy, and risk management. And as accountants, we need to understand that. And so we need a wider and deeper understanding. Things like the adequacy of governance disclosures or any of the other sustainability disclosures, to be honest, is new. And long-term strategic measurement and evaluation of progress towards things like climate-based targets is new. We are used to working more in the short term or looking back, and now we are thinking much longer term and the impact of things like climate-based targets. What about behavioral competence? Well, as accountants, we already have a fantastic base. This is really our bread and butter, right? We are strong at analytical thinking. We have this amazing curiosity and commitment to lifelong learning. We are resilient, we are flexible, we are agile. We've got intellectual agility. And all of this prepares us well for making the transition towards this type of work in the sustainability space. But what's new? Well, to be honest, there's probably going to be a greater emphasis on self-learning than ever before, just because of the extent of the subject matter that we need to try get our heads around. We're going to need to apply our professional skepticism and professional judgment, which is, well known and is one of our strengths, but we're going to need to apply it to a new subject matter. And although it's not on the slide, things like collaboration and communication, we are going to need to work with a much wider range of experts. It's not new for us to work with experts, but we need to work and collaborate with a much larger group and help break down silos within organizations. What about technical expertise? What hasn't changed? Well, I could read these points, you can look at them, but I mean, just fundamentally, we already are great at reporting. We're great at assurance, and we're great at processes and internal controls. But what's new? Well, firstly, we've got new standards. We've got this new subject matter to try and understand. We're going to need to be able to review disclosures about sustainability risks. We're going to need to learn different ways to measure. One of the things we've been hearing a lot in this outreach is how sustainability reporting just isn't quite as exact as financial reporting. We're used to having a pretty high level of certainty about the accuracy of numbers. But when we think about sustainability reporting, many of these metrics that we're going to be reporting they can be qualitative, or they can be subject to a lot more doubts. We don't have double entry accounting to help us to make sure that we're getting it right either. Whatever goes in the disclosure is what goes in. And so this is different. Things like scientific-based metrics are new to us. Physical risks, energy flows, emission sources. And as noted in the last point there, more emphasis on information obtained from external sources. And we're going to have to think about how we are sure that information is reliable. And finally, on ethics. Well, I could list everything about our ethical code, right? That hasn't changed. That's our foundation. That's our strength. That's what we're known for, is our ethical core. But what's new? Well, as we do provide these types of services in sustainability reporting and assurance, we're going to be encountering an ever-increasing risk of management bias as management faces new pressures to achieve long-term strategic commitments and as concerns about greenwashing erode trust. And so we're going to be called on to apply our ethical principles to new dilemmas, to new situations. And hopefully the outcome of this will be that because professional accountants are involved in sustainability reporting, the quality and reliability and integrity of that reporting is going to go up. But applying our code in this context is going to be new. So some final thoughts. That's our framework, and we're going to continue to talk about those 4 areas during the panel discussion. And then I hope that you'll have an opportunity later on that you'll take advantage of the opportunity to share your thoughts about what hasn't changed, but especially what's new. But I shared a version of the slide, I think, at a PAFA event about a year ago before we even went on this journey that we're on now. And I think it still holds true as we've been continuing on. As we think about building capacity for this work, it is really critical that we think holistically. And you would have noticed that a little bit in those lenses I shared, the different ways we need to think about this. So from a capacity perspective, we need to be thinking about building capacity amongst preparers, assurance providers, the future professional accountants. So obviously our core qualifications need to evolve. Non-accounting experts. If we're going to be working with these experts, we're going to be placing certain demands on them. If they provide us with information, we are expecting that the information has been subject to a certain level of rigor. So what type of capacity do we need to build amongst the non-accountant experts that we're going to work with? We need to build capacity amongst regulators so they can effectively regulate the space. And most importantly, for this conversation today, we need to build capacity of educators. How are we going to get our accountancy education educators to be equipped to teach something that they've never done in real life? And in fact, that is an emerging practice. How are we going to make sure that we support them to develop themselves, give them exposure perhaps to real world situations, help to ensure that as this practice of sustainability reporting matures, that they are able to teach what is actually happening in reality. So that's the one angle that we need to think holistically. But another one is where we integrate sustainability into. And it really is everywhere. It's into our university curricula, it's into professional curricula, it's into assessments, it's into the practical experience even that an aspiring professional accountant gets. Is it going to be maybe compulsory in some contexts to ensure that the individual gets exposure to sustainability type work during their practical experience? Obviously, it's got to go into our CPD offerings, and we're also starting to emerge around the world this idea of post-qualification specializations in sustainability, allowing certain people to go deeper. And that speaks to that difference between the core competence that everyone needs versus is there a level of specialized competence that some people will choose to take as their career path. And finally, as we think about the different curricula, the different modules that we teach at universities or in the professional education, we're not sure, and this has been confirmed as we've engaged around the world, we don't think that this lends itself to just something as a standalone topic. So the solution is not to create a sustainability reporting module, put it on the side and let people do that, and then they can continue with everything else. What we have learned is that sustainability-related reporting has many touch points into accountancy curricula. So things like financial accounting, reporting, auditing, management accounting, even taxation in some countries, ethics, governance, risk management, internal controls, professional skills, and many other areas perhaps. We need to start thinking in our curricula. In almost everything we teach, we need to be thinking, is there a sustainability angle to this? If there's a case study that's based on financial information, is there a need to include an element of sustainability disclosure so that the student, the learner, thinks about, doesn't just think about the finances, but starts thinking in a more integrated way. My last slide, before I hand back for the panel to provide their inputs to the conversation today, is this one, which is really targeted at each of us as individuals. Under our code of ethics, we all have a responsibility to be professionally competent in whatever areas we work. And so we've got to each take responsibility to make sure that we upskill ourselves to be able to play in the space. So some thoughts around what you can do. If you haven't read IFRS S1 and S2 yet, that's a great place to start. Those standards will not look foreign to you. They follow a similar structure to what you're used to in financial reporting. But I really encourage you to take the time to read through those. Encourage you to read the exposure draft from the IAASB 5000 on sustainability assurance. as well as some of the other documents that go, the explanatory memos that come with that, because they really give some good perspective on where the differences are and where the key issues are in sustainability assurance. COSO recently put out some guidance titled Achieving Effective Internal Control over Sustainability, another really important piece of literature to spend some time working through. And then this should be obvious, but really, really important. Take the time to read available sustainability reports. Think of your favorite global publicly traded company and go and look at their reporting and see if they're already doing sustainability reporting. They probably are. And start working through that. See what is disclosed. See what's put in there. But don't just read it as though it's all true. Read it with that professional skepticism, that critical thinking that is ingrained into you as professional accountants. And ask questions about whether you think this is genuine reporting that's done with integrity, or if there's greenwashing. We're really excited at IFAC and been working together with the IFRS Foundation on an e-learning course that's going to be launching, I believe, probably early next year. And this is going to be a free e-learning course that anybody can access through the IFRS Foundation that will develop your skills in S1 and S2 in particular. So I encourage you to watch out for that. I have no doubt PAFA will do a lot to promote it when that becomes available. And then finally, and I'll share this link in the chat once I'm finished with my final comments. At IFAC, we've recognized the importance of making sure that the global community has access to sustainability education resources. And so we've put together a resource page which lists a whole lot of different courses that are currently available around the world. Many of them are for fees, so just in full disclosure, but we've tried to, rather than limit or say which are our favorites, we're providing the list of some of the best courses that are available currently around the world, and that's opportunity for you to further develop yourself. So at that point, I'm going to stop, and really huge thanks again for this opportunity, and I'm excited to now sit back and listen to the panel, as well as to all of you as you submit your questions and comments. And please, as you do that, it's not just questions we're looking for, but really your perspective. So think about that. Think about it in the context of those 4 areas that I listed: business acumen, behavioral competence, technical expertise, and ethical behavior. And think about what hasn't changed and what's new. And we look forward to hearing your perspectives. So Evelyn, thank you very much. I hand back to you.
Thank you, Bruce. Don't leave the floor for the time being. First, we want to thank you for the leadership at IFAC, because sustainability is a new agenda and very new. So we are all learning, and the leadership is appreciated. And the framework that you have given us in terms of what is continuing and what is new, it's a good framework. And our panel will soon offer their thoughts about what is continuing and what has changed. But I just thought 2 questions that are specific to IFAC, you might address them now. And these are from Yakuba Traore. He says, is IFAC planning to redraft IES to take into account sustainability? That's the first question. The second question is, IFAC planning to issue a guidance to PAOs to address sustainability in initial professional development and continuing professional development? So those are specific to IFAC. I thought you can take them before the panel. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Yakuba, for the questions. So we have commenced a project that may result in standards revision. We at the moment are in this process of information gathering to determine if there's sufficient evidence to support standards revisions. As I mentioned, that process is almost complete. This is one of our final engagements as part of that information gathering. And over the coming weeks, we'll be analyzing what we've learned. And at the end of November, the International Panel on Accountancy Education will be meeting and making a decision about whether we will revise the standards. So I can't give you the answer yet, but I watch the space. There will be more to come. But your question around guidance, Absolutely. So one of the things we are committed to is that as we've been learning so much through the information gathering we've been doing, we are committed to publishing what we're learning in different forms. So there may be some thought leadership that will come out. There may also be some non-authoritative guidance that we develop around how you apply the education standards as they are today to sustainability reporting. And even if we do standards revisions, there will still be a need for additional guidance to support the community. So we are very committed to developing whatever we can to support the community in moving together in the same direction. So please watch the space. We're also trying to move at speed with this. So if we do move to standards revisions, there will likely be an exposure draft that'll come out in March next year with a view to issuing revised standards by September. So that's the plan. We're on an aggressive timeline, yeah, please watch the space. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you. So in terms of our response from Africa, the first thing that I'm going to do is to introduce a panel. So I'll ask my panelists to switch their cameras on. We have Mandy Olivia. Mandy is from South Africa. Mandy will talk about business acumen. Her focus will be business acumen. From her experience in education, what will continue and what has changed. And then we have Mr. Isaac Njuguna. Mr. Isaac Njuguna is from Kenya, and he will talk about technical expertise. He will deal with what has changed and what is continuing in technical expertise. And finally, we have Dr. Innocent Ikuosa from Nigeria. Dr. Innocent will talk about behavior competence and ethics. What is continuing and what has changed. So I now want to invite my panelists, Mandy first, to talk about business acumen. The floor is over to you, Mandy.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to be here today to talk to you. Maybe just to say up front, I'm not the expert in this area, but I do share a passion for the development of accountants who serve society and are relevant to the workplaces. I thought I would start with a comment around the fact that there are three certainties in life. The one is taxes, the second is death, and the third is change. And it is really important as accountants, first and foremost, that we are open to and embrace change. I've been around for a number of years. I won't say how many. But it's interesting to observe the evolution that the accounting profession has been on and will continue to evolve over time. So today, Evelyn has asked me to specifically address, in the context of sustainability and sustainability reporting, the issue of business acumen. And I thought the way I would share with you is to first just share some direction that SAICA has been working on in the context of our competency framework. And this work has been in action from as far back as 2016. So it's quite interesting to see some of these themes coming through and coming to fruition. I think for me, the first place to start is really to define what an accountant does. And I think, there's another area for discussion around the attraction of the profession. And I do believe it's because people don't fully understand what an accountant actually does. So I'm sharing with you now the definition we have come up with for chartered accountants. in South Africa, and we speak about someone who is a responsible leader, who behaves ethically, and here's the important part, creates sustainable value for a wide range of stakeholders within an organization. A CA uses integrative thinking to interpret, analyze, and evaluate financial and non-financial information, which enables them to influence others and support impactful decision-making, thereby contributing meaningfully to the economy and to society. And I think if you start with an overarching definition, it becomes easier to ascertain where our focus areas need to be going forward, and to look at it through a different lens. So I thought I would start by just sharing, we talk about business acumen. What is an acumen? We use a similar term in our framework. We also talk about enabling competencies. I think that's a good way to describe business acumen, because again, as Bruce has pointed out, one shouldn't be looking at things in silos. Really, one needs to have a holistic and broader view of business, society, and the global environment in order to make these decisions around the sustainability of an organization. So we see enabling competencies or business acumen as one of them being an essential skill to influence the way that accountants work, the way that they think, the way they are living in the world, and the tools that they're using in the workplace. These are pervasive to work and behavior and are transversal and to be used across a variety of different environments, functions, and roles. An enabling competency allows an accountant to effectively demonstrate his or her professional competence by displaying these acumens, one of which, of course, is business acumen. So what do we mean by business acumen? And in short, our definition includes the ability to make quick, correct, and or focused strategic decisions and good judgment in a business or business division. And we have divided our competency area around business acumen into looking at the internal environment. And here the focus has shifted to looking at what value business can provide in society. There's a very strong focus and shift to this concept of creating value, and looking at things through multiple lenses as opposed to that of just the shareholder. This also focuses on how organizations create value through their business models, takes cognizance of the various capital resources to optimize value creation, again, across this wide range of stakeholders, customers, shareholders, employees, suppliers, and other members of the public. It is also important in looking at the internal business environment to be able to align the organization's context with its governance strategy and business model, and use a holistic perspective to interpret an organization's business processes. In terms of the second area under business acumen, it's about looking at the external environment. And again, it's knowing and understanding not just about how accounting works, but what impact politics, economics, social issues, technological changes, legal and environmental issues have on an organization's strategy, their business model, and their process, and to look at things far more broadly. And then the final area we've included in business acumen actually talks to innovation and creativity. And I always joke when I make this comment, because typically when accountants think of creativity, they think of cooking the books or manipulating the financial statements, and that is clearly not what I'm referring to here. But there is a need really to ensure that accountants develop that ability to be innovative and creative, in addressing the problems we face today, and exploring different and innovative approaches to these problems. So what's, I'm not going to focus on what's the same. I think the main message from me is that, you know, we often see new areas come in and we panic about volume and syllabus overload and what is this going to do to the education program. And I think that we need to recognize first and foremost that there is a lot of things we are already doing that actually talk directly to the areas within sustainability and sustainability reporting. So I think that's the first thing to acknowledge, that there is a lot we can build on. So what is different? And I'm going to try and express this differently to what Bruce has expressed. I think first and foremost, it's about mindset and the lens through which we view things. It needs to be more holistic. It needs to be more integrated. I think when we talk about accountants, very often we think only about the financial implications of things, but we really do need to start engaging with non-financial information and the impact that this has on the sustainability or the ongoing ability to continue within an organization. So I think that's the first thing, is the lens through which we view this needs to be broader and broadened, so we are looking at it from a variety of perspectives.
Mandy, your camera is struggling. Your voice is good, but your camera.
Sorry,
yes,
that was
that's
me.
better. That's
I
better.
do apologize. It's me with my piece of paper. I do apologize. The second thing I think that is changed and we need to embrace is we need to be looking not only at financial information, but at non-financial information. So that obviously presents a number of challenges, but as accountants, I think we're used to measurement and reporting, and it's really simply an extension of that in the non-financial information space. The other area, I think, from a change perspective, is that it's looking at creating value and not just reaping the rewards to shareholders. It's also future looking as opposed to our current financial statements, which are typically historical in nature. So I think those for me are the core areas that we need to work on when we look at business acumen in the context of the program. I'd just like to end with looking at some potential challenges, and I think we should rather use the word opportunities rather than challenges. I think the first is in the education context, or in an academic or even professional program, the challenge is access to resources. So a key part of this process would be the upskilling of the people who are doing the teaching. And I think this is an excellent opportunity for people to collaborate and share. And as Bruce has pointed out, a lot of that is already available on the IFAC website. But in the academic context, you know, how do you change material? How do you change assessments? And so on. So I think that would be one of the challenges. In assessment, and I've actually just finished reviewing this morning a couple of questions. And it's actually not that difficult to change your assessments. I think the key for me to remember is that assessment drives behavior. And so if we're going to embrace this fully, it's quite important that we're addressing and developing assessing this within our assessments. And then I think just final challenges would relate to, first of all, volume. You know, as I said, you know, people see change and they want to run away, they get anxious. But a lot of what is required is already there. So let's build on that and look at it positively rather than as a challenge. So volumes could be seen as a challenge. And then the final challenge, I think, is around integration. Typically, as accountants, in the way we do teach in a very siloed manner. And it's very important that, and I'm just talking about business acumen, my colleagues will talk about some of the aspects related to behavioral and ethics. It all needs to be integrated into the way that we teach in order for this to really have effect going forward. So on that note, Evelyn, I'll hand back to you. I hope I have given my thoughts on what business acumen is and how it needs to change. I do think, just as an aside, there are changes required to the education standards. If you look at the current IS2, there's a very small outcome which talks about business and organizational environment, which has 3 learning outcomes in it. And I do think that needs to be expanded in order to accommodate the fact that we need to be thinking more broadly about business and not just be focused on a particular aspect, such as financial information. So Evelyn, thank you, and I shall hand back to you. And I believe we'll wait for questions at the end. Is that correct? Otherwise, I am available.
Yes, it is at the end. So thank you, Mandy. Very interesting. We'll have questions and answers, but one key that I've gotten from you is broadening the way we think about our context, our organization, and the regulatory environment. Bruce also talked about we have to think about the breadth and depth of governance and the context that we live in. And I liked your definition of an accountant. You said someone who is responsible, ethical, and creating value. The issue of creating value and future forecast. So our challenge is, how do we design accounting education to make sure that we are future focused, we are creating value? But anyway, some of the answers will come in this afternoon through all the speakers and the participation of the audience. Let me stop there and ask Isaac Njuguna from Kenya to talk about technical competence.
Thank you, Evelyn. I hope you can be able to hear me.
I confirm, Isaac, we can hear you.
Thank you. Isaac Njuguna, joining from the Kenya Accountants and Secretaries National Examinations Board. This is a professional accountancy examinations board in Kenya, working closely with the Institute of Certified Public Accountants, which regulates the profession in Kenya. I serve on the Learning and Development Advisory Committee of PAFA, and some few years back, I had the opportunity to serve at the International Accounting Education Standards Board when we were developing the international education standards. And I wish first to focus on where we are and in terms of the technical competence, which is covered under International Education Standard number 2. And really to note that the standard had, to some extent, incorporated aspects of sustainability, although the recent changes will now require a relook of the standard and the learning outcomes. The standard had coverage on issues of governance, risk, and internal control in terms of various disclosures on governance. And also there was a competence in the area of business strategy and management, and even in audit and assurance. But we do note that there is a definite gap in terms of sustainability risk and opportunities, both in terms of disclosure and even from a technical accounting perspective. So the need to review the competencies in IS2, in particular under governance and under business strategy, to incorporate aspects of sustainability risk and opportunities, and also a need to look at the learning outcomes. As we look at the technical competence, and I like what has already been presented, that there are opportunities definitely. And one of the challenges or an area to look at in terms of the technical competence is that sustainability reporting, we are moving away from our comfort zone where we have been dealing with very definite figures, very clear parameters. Moving into sustainability, of course, issues of uncertainty come in. And most of the information that is related to sustainability may not be easily quantifiable. Because once you bring in the issues of ESG, you bring in the issues of resource utilization, issues of emission, issues of environmental innovation. Then you move on to the social perspective, issues of employee welfare, human rights, issues of community welfare. Quantifying this for purposes of reporting and disclosure may be a challenge that accountants may face, and thus the need to look at their competencies in that area. Then when you go to aspects of governance, again, issues of shareholders' rights, issues of social responsibility, and issues of management practices, again, this is a new zone that professional accountants are swimming in. And there's a definite need then to engage with other experts, non-accountants, because the sustainability reports cut across professions. So the need to engage and interact with non-accountants is definitely critical, and this needs to be incorporated. Talking about the guidelines available, and I'm happy that this topic has already come up, we do note that still there's a critical gap, as has already been mentioned, in terms of guidelines. If you look at specific country practices, such as in Kenya, we have various bodies that have attempted to come up with guidelines. The government has come up with the laws on climate change. The central bank has come up with guidelines on governance. The Capital Markets Authority has come up with its own guidelines on disclosure requirements for listed institutions. And all these guidelines may pose a challenge, particularly to professional accountants, because these are coming from different sources. And it's also good to note that the PAOs may not have been in the front line in terms of the development of these guidelines. This, as I've said, has been left to other regulators. Sustainability reporting has mainly been looked at from an environmental perspective, but not much from an accounting perspective. But the coming into force of sustainability reporting now has brought accountants very much into the picture. And we believe that they should play their critical role in terms of the development of these guidelines, even at the country specific level. There's a lot of goodwill, definitely. If I can speak from Africa, from the recent PAFA Congress in Cote d'Ivoire, where sustainability was given a lot of prominence. And we saw commitment from many African member countries to incorporate sustainability reporting within their curriculum and within their broad accountancy qualification framework. And we have also noted that countries like Tanzania have actually formally adopted sustainability reporting. We expect then that with the new standards coming up, the IFRS S1 and 2, taking effect from January 2024, we need to move fast as professional accountancy examination bodies, and to ensure that the requirements of these standards are incorporated in our curriculum. We are still at a very early stage in terms of curriculum review. In Kenya, we are looking at these standards to determine whether we need to incorporate them within the current qualification framework, or whether we need to come up with a new qualification, even at post-qualification level. So that's a discussion that is ongoing, but perhaps a harmonized approach for various PAOs in Africa would be very much ideal. And that is where now even PAFA will come in and issue guidelines, even as we expect guidelines from IFAC. I believe that PAFA can also pick the cue and develop guidelines that can assist professional bodies in Africa to effectively incorporate sustainability reporting requirements within their technical competence areas. Whether we need to incorporate them within the curriculum, or whether we need to develop a different qualification for that matter, I think that is something that PAFA perhaps would guide, so that we have a harmonized approach to this. I know that within Africa, we are moving towards mutual recognition of qualifications, And one area where we could perhaps adopt a harmonized approach is in terms of how we are incorporating sustainability reporting within our curriculum. Otherwise, in terms of even audit, IES 8, in terms of the competence requirements for audit practitioners, I think with the issue of risk-based and sustainability-based assurance, then definitely there is also need to look at IES 8 in terms of the competencies, in terms of the learning outcomes, and in terms of audit practice to ensure that even as we move into sustainability accounting, the area of assurance is also not left behind. Otherwise, the goodwill is there. We are happy with the effort that the countries have taken, and we hope that with PAFA and IFAC, we should be able to effectively incorporate these competencies within our curriculum. Thank you, and back to Evelyn. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaac. There will be a question and answer at the end, but from your presentation, it appears there's an agreement that this is a changing landscape, and maybe individually as PAOs, as education institutions, we may not be able to deal with the complexities. So the pooling of our resources together, even the guidance and the collaboration with the international institutions like IFAC is very, very important. We get your point emphasizing the sharing of resources as Africa to advance together on this matter. So let me give a chance to the final panelist before we talk about questions. The final panelist is Dr. Innocent Ikosa from Nigeria. Over to you, Dr. Innocent. You are muted, Dr. Innocent.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now, thanks.
All right, thank you. I want to warn that my internet may throw me out. If I'm thrown out, please bear with me, I will come back. So I'm to discuss on two areas, behavioral aspects and ethical behaviors. So on behavioral competence, as Bruce spoke a few minutes ago, it involves analytical thinking, curiosity, and lifelong learning, which we already have with us in financial reporting. As we move to the terrain of sustainability, what is going to be new for professional accountant will be the widening scope, the greater emphasis on self-learning. So what has happened within the accountancy profession in Nigeria, especially the Institute of Chartered Accountants, is to build a mindset within the community. As we increase our knowledge or awareness of sustainability, the Nigerian Chartered Accountants, that's mostly those in ICANN, has this slogan that the name of the institute is ICANN, meaning I can. So the name of the institute, ICANN, has been turned into a competence and has become a kind of behavior among them. And what that is trying to say is that the rigor that we went through to pass the ICANN professional exam already equips us to deal with any challenging new development within the profession. So if sustainability has many challenges, we, having dealt with the professional exam, are able to use the same spirit to deal with sustainability issue. So in terms of, for instance, applying professional skepticism and judgment to a new subject matter, one thing that has come up in sustainability issue is how do you do that for a subject matter that is in the future? Because as we know, some sustainability information are future oriented. If it is financial, perhaps mostly what we deal with now is in the past, and there are metrics, quantifiable, measurable in monetary terms. But when we look at the nature of sustainability, they are soft information, future-oriented. So I require a different behavioral skill to apply the professional skepticism and judgment. More so, when you look at the nature of the reporting, the issues are such that the accountant will need to ask himself questions. So for instance, if we talk about value, we are saying we are creating value. One question that arises is value to who? Value to the business or value to the community? And in this also arises another important issue the accountant takes into consideration when he works, and that is the public interest mandate. In the public interest mandate, the accountant works for the public or takes into consideration the public interest as opposed to self-interest. And so there has to be a delicate balancing, because when we're talking about issue of sustainability, it may go beyond just the business. So value to the business may not be enough. The accountant may extend and talk about value to the community, to the public in its entirety. So we then require a different skill to apply the professional skepticism and judgment. And especially when you operate in an environment where the reporting is taken to be a CSR, corporate social responsibility, and you want to spin a message that, yes, you care so much about the society. Professional skepticism and judgment requires that you ask more questions. So those are the new areas that the accountant will have to look into while he exercises his role or plays his role in the emerging sustainability reporting, and the same then goes into assurance, where he is expected to express opinion that perhaps the sustainability report present faithfully what he proposed to present. Just like when you go to IFRS S1, one thing it has done is to bring in those principles in qualitative characteristics, fundamental and qualitative characteristics in financial reporting, and expect that sustainability reporting should exhibit all that when we prepare them. So when corporations prepare sustainability reports, it is expected that they meet the two fundamental qualitative characteristics in financial reporting: relevance and faithful representation. So when you look at your assurance, where you're now going to say that, yes, it faithfully represents what it proposed to represent, that's a different skill that the accountant will need to apply to that. And that brings into the issue of the standard on audit that is developing. And we need to pay more attention to that to then see how the accountant will apply his skill in assuring sustainability information. Now, when we come to, so that is on behavioral competence. I then move on to the ethical behaviors. Now, for ethical behavior, we know that there is a minimum level of ethical behavior that the accountant should exhibit when he engages in his professional work. We have IES 4 that deals with the level of ethical values or ethical value that accountant should exhibit, or level of ethics that accountant should exhibit when he engages in its work. Part of this also requires that the accountant, under our present financial reporting and the individual work we do in our office, that we are doing what is right, and we exercise due care in what we do. If we then extend that to sustainability, there will be an increased risk that, because of the nature of the information we're dealing with, we may be exposed to an ethical behavior that does not take into account the new information that we're dealing with. So, for instance, when companies engage in sustainability, and we want to say that, yes, I talked about faithful representation, for instance. So for me to say that, yes, this information has been faithfully represented, there is an ethical obligation on my own part. Ethical obligation, because I want what I'm saying to be correct and not influenced in any way. And I want to talk about one characteristics of sustainability reporting for some companies. It's not a general one. And that is one of the challenges of sustainability reporting. In Bruce's presentation, he used the word greenwashing. Greenwashing because you tell your story, and most times what companies do is to tell this story in the good light, even when the real happening within the businesses are different. So for instance, I looked at SDG 8 among banks in Nigeria, and these are those that are already engaging in sustainability reporting. SDG 8 talks about decent work and economic growth, and that relates with the welfare of staff and good working environment, atmosphere. I then discovered that there is prevalence of casual workers. You know, the casual workers are not staff of the banks. They are subjected to all sorts of discrimination. But when you look at the sustainability report, none of these banks reported the use of casual workers. That to me is greenwashing. The accountant has an ethical obligation to report what is right. And in sustainability, there'll be so much of such challenges. In IFRS S2 or even IFRS S1, one of the things required under metrics and targets is for companies to select the metrics and targets that they are using to measure their performance in sustainability and report over the period which they apply that. But in a situation where we have this greenwashing and the posture of CSR, that may not be correctly represented in sustainability reporting. And the accountant will be under challenge to ensure that the right thing is done. Again, one of the challenges facing sustainability, which goes on the ethical behaviors of accountants as they deal with this subject matter, is the motivation behind sustainability reporting. Is it because it is legal, the law requires you to do that? Is it because it's the right thing to do? Because you genuinely care about people, planet, and profit, and there is a delicate balancing in them? Or is it simply because of the fact that there is a business case, and therefore you want to pursue the business case in engaging in sustainability reporting? These are practical ethical issues confronting the accountant. And this is where we need skills to be able to strike a delicate balancing as we deal with these issues, because the issue of sustainability goes beyond just creating value. I talked about measurement and value. The question is, value you're creating for who? Is it for the business? Is it for the community? Is it for the society? So these are challenging questions that in them contain ethical values that the accountant will need to reconcile himself as we move into sustainability reporting. Evelyn, I will stop at this point.
Thank you, Dr. Innocent, but I will not allow you to leave the floor for the time being. That was I think ethics are not an easy matter to discuss, but you've done justice to them. Listening to you, my first question to you will be, listening from you, there will be situations, or maybe the most important thing that I've heard from you is we need to fortify our minds as accountants that will serve the public interest. You talk about I can, slogan I can. You also talked about our shared slogan, we serve the public interest, that we really need to strengthen that. And maybe that's our feedback to IFAC, that how we can strengthen how we teach the ethics, how we improve the education standards to strengthen our minds, our resolve to serve the public interest. But you have talked about, that's now coming to my question, you have talked about a situation where whose value? Is it the value for the shareholders or for the community? Now, my question to you is, suppose an accountant has come through that situation where there is a struggle, call it an ethical dilemma, between the immediate needs of the business and the wider needs of the community or the public. And yet we are employed or appointed by the shareholders. Is, as we stand, is it an easy matter to deal with, or do we need an improvement in our ethical standards to deal with that situation? That's the question.
Sorry, I was thrown out when you were talking. I said so.
Okay,
So
I'll ask the question again. I'm saying you gave a situation whereby there is an ethical dilemma between whose value. Is it the value of the business, like the shareholders, or the public? Now, I'm saying in the current circumstances, if an accountant encounters that situation, is it easy to resolve, or do we need an enhancement of education standards to guide how an accountant can resolve that?
Oh, okay, that's a very good question. But I think we'll be guided by IFRS S1, S2, like we're dealing with it at the moment. But in that, I'm trying to cast our case beyond IFRS S1 and S2. If I'm going to go with IFRS S1 and S2, it's about value creation, like they have said, and that's value created by the business for its stakeholders, essentially those who have interest in the business. So that's what IFRS S2 is, S1, S2 all about, because it's like investors, those who provide finances, and those are the information that were provided that S1, S2 are addressing. So it's investors. But in the process of dealing with information for investors and talking about shareholders and providers of financial capital's value, there's a need for us to also think about the wider society. And that is where I'm saying that the public interest mandate of the accountant should be taken into consideration while the accountant does his work with sustainability. And the IES on ethics, maybe Bruce will have to take that into consideration. Because while I'm saying that is, there's still a reconciliation to be done between IFRS S1, S2, and GRI. Though we're hearing there is interoperability between both of them and they're working together. But GRI appears to be more stakeholder oriented. And that also tells us that there are issues of ethics that we need to consider in IFRS S1 and S2. Thank you.
Analyst, Miss. Sorry, I would like to bring back Mr. Njuguna Isaac from Kenya. Your area was technical competence. Are you here, Mr. Isaac?
Yes, I can hear you, Evelyn.
Okay, yeah. So I want to pose a question before I open to the audience. Your area was technical competence. And in Bruce's presentation, he talked about what hasn't changed. And one of the things he talked about is accessions. You remember, I went back to my early days in auditing when I could think about complete, accurate, those accessions. Are those still relevant in where we are going, or we need to downgrade, or when we're doing financial auditing, we have those as accessions, presentation, completeness, accuracy. Are those technical competencies to be able to verify the numbers as they're supposed to be relevant in this sustainability environment?
Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. First of all, the basic principles of accounting remain the same, and they should cut across sustainability, including accuracy, completeness, and integrity of information. However, as has been noted, sustainability reporting is bringing in a new dimension, both in accounting and audit. And we noted the issue of measurability of data. How do you measure sustainability efforts and initiatives? How do you measure issues of governance for reporting purposes? When you cross over to the area of value addition, you note that quantifying the immediate benefits of sustainability efforts is not easy, because you are looking far into the future and you have to report on the value addition and the benefits that are expected to emerge from that. So from where I stand, even as the basic principles of accounting cut across sustainability, there is need for a new approach in terms of auditing and accounting, bringing into the picture the issue of sustainability reporting. So there's need, therefore, even from a technical competence point of view, to relook at how we are training accountants beyond the basics of accounting in a conventional world, because sustainability brings in aspects of, we are moving away from the comfort zone, from the conventional, what is known, what is certain. And I did like what was presented earlier, that this is an area of uncertainty requiring a new approach to accounting and to auditing. And in that context, I want to also mention about an issue that was mentioned earlier about what do we do with those who have already qualified. For those who are within the professional development program, we can bring in the issue of education, but we cannot take back to the education cycle those who have already qualified. That therefore calls for the CPD requirements to incorporate issues of sustainability, because these are already practitioners. This concept has come and found them within the realms of practicing. Therefore, the CPD requirements have to incorporate issues of sustainability audits and sustainability reporting. So, Evelyn, there is need for a paradigm shift in the way we focus as far as sustainability reporting is concerned, and the way we define accounting has to be different as we move into this realm of uncertainty, these realms of non-quantifiable data that we are calling sustainability reporting. Thank you. Back to you.
Sorry, my mic had a bit froze. I want to go
Evelyn,
back to the.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I hope the audience can also hear us. We now want to pick the questions and the comments in the chat so that we can respond to the comments in the chat. There is the Siforian Maligumu. He says sustainability reporting is very comprehensive and it covers everyone in the organization. Therefore, each person in an organization needs to think and understand the importance of sustainability reporting. This is a matter that emphasizes the need for interaction between accountants and everybody they work with in the organization. Do we have the competencies for working with others, or do we need our education standards to be improved? I would like to ask Mandy to take this question, because in your presentation you talked about responsible. Do we have the level of responsibility that enables us to interact with others in the organization, or do we need any improvements in our accounting education to do that?
Thanks, Evelyn. It takes me back to the reason why I became an accountant and how I was so wrong about being an accountant and what an accountant does. When I was younger, I was very shy, very introverted, and I believed I could become an accountant because I could sit in a back room and just be on my computer all day and not have to deal with people. And the reality is that the need for interpersonal skills, management skills, leadership skills is already a core of what accountants should have in their arsenal of tools to pick from. I think where accountants need to focus in terms of improving is to work on dealing with people who are not like themselves. So here's where we talk about diversity, and I'm talking about diversity of thought. An engineer thinks very differently to an accountant, who thinks very differently to someone in marketing. And it's really about embracing diversity of thought and further developing those interpersonal skills. It's always, I think, always a good thing in the role of accountants. And I really do believe that accountants are not those people who sit in the back office, you know, doing spreadsheets and so on. They really need to be engaged with the rest of business in order to fully understand, you know, the environment that we live in and the changes that might need to be made for us to shift into this direction of thinking more holistically about the ongoing sustainability of the organization, not just for the sake of the shareholders, but for employees and suppliers as well. So, you know, I think, you know, if you go back to the education standard, you know, we do talk about interpersonal and communication skills, and you know, personal skills, but you know, I think there's always room for improvement in terms of, you know, making it clear that we are dealing with perhaps a wider audience and needing to speak their language. And for me, the accountant's always been the storyteller, the person who can take the different views and make them meaningful in a way that everybody can understand. So for me, I think to an extent it is already there, but certainly is something that needs to continue to be focused on going forward. Thanks, Evelyn.
Thank you, Mandy. I want to call Bruce on the line. Having listened to our panelists, before we go to the session for all the questions, do you have any immediate questions you have for our panelists?
No, Evelyn, no questions from my side at this stage, just listening, and I guess really excited to hear if the things that we've all shared, myself and the panelists, interested, you know, to what extent that's resonating with the audience. So encourage you all to just you know, participate in that through the Q&A. And give us your thoughts. I've seen some interesting questions coming through. So you know, happy to take those at the appropriate time. But yeah, no, nothing further at this stage, Evelyn. Thanks.
Yeah, and I think a key message that is coming is that we really have the core, but the breadth and the depth needs to be expanded to respond to a changing world in this sustainability world that we're going in. So I will continue with the questions. Godfrey Kilenga says, the accounting and auditing are changing drastically, and some of the core competences we thought would work may slightly be degraded in the new ESG reporting. This for sure requires agent intervention, and what you do is the right call. On learning and some work hands and practical in the future would be critical. So my question let me pose this to Dr. Innocent. Do we have experience in practical sustainability reporting and assurance to date? You're muted.
Yeah, sorry. If you have followed the presentation, starting from the Bruce and some comments made, you will see that what we're saying is there are some basic knowledge or experience that the accountant already has developed that are transferable to sustainability. And all the accountant needs to do is to expand on that. And if you look at those 4 areas that Bruce spoke about, it's all about the fact that sustainability is now going to go beyond what we do in financial, and therefore the accountant will need to develop new skills to be able to cope with the sustainability issues. It is not that the accountant is going to start all over from beginning to go into sustainability. He has already developed some of those or acquired some of those skills. So for instance, I spent time interviewing institutional investors in London on the integration of sustainability in financial reporting. And what they want is that if you come to sustainability, we want the same rigor that applies to financial reporting to apply to sustainability. And they are all looking forward to the accountants to be able to bring that level of rigor. And why do they want that? It is to enable them trust sustainability information. As we are discussing, you know, at this level, we're still talking about disclosures, disclosure of sustainability information. Somebody asked the other question about accounting. It also goes into that what we do in management accounting in internal offices of these businesses. But it takes the accountant to bring that level of rigor that we apply to financial reporting to sustainability reporting. So the accountant already has that knowledge that he applies in financial reporting that is then transferred to sustainability. He then realizes that, well, this information I'm dealing with is not exactly the same as in financial. So what new? What's something new? What's the new thing I'm going to do to make sustainability come to that same level? If you also watch the IFRS S1, we're talking about same time frame. And this is what some of those institutional investors complain about. You know, today you prepare financial statements because it's statutorily required. So there's a timeline for that. And then some businesses or some companies then prepare sustainability reporting subsequently, months after. And so they don't see that connection, that link between what you have in sustainability information and what you have in financial information. And they believe that it will take the accountant to integrate sustainability and financial reporting. So a lot of roles, a lot of expectation are already heaped on the accountant as we move into this sustainability reporting space. Quickly also, IFRS S1 is already telling us of that same rigor in financial reporting being applied to sustainability, and has talked about the fundamental and qualitative, fundamental and enhancing qualitative characteristics in financial reporting to also apply in sustainability. So we'll talk about relevance, we'll talk about faithful representation, and that is the accountant's language. So he has something to bring to this space, and the whole world is looking up to the accountants to bring this transformation in sustainability, and we should grab the opportunity. Thank you.
I like that response. I think, yes, indeed, the rigor that we put through in reporting and assurance makes you confident. You can sleep any day and say, I did what anybody should have done in the circumstances. Remember what we do in documenting, one of the rules in documenting is that someone who would have done the process, if they go through a document, should arrive at the same conclusion. So maybe our desire is that the standards and the education behind it should give us the same rigor that we do in financial reporting and assurance to be able to report and provide assurance report for sustainability. And this ties in with the next question in the chat, because Salem Sam says, it seems that we're going to create a new profile, that's accountant engineer profession. But the question is about which part is predominant, accounting or engineer. I guess the answer is what has been given by Dr. Innocent, that whatever we are doing when we are dealing with the sustainability space, which Salem talks about it as an engineer, as accountants, we want to have the same rigor and the same confidence that we have in financial reporting. And the education standards have to be revised and updated and enhanced to be able to help qualified accountants to be able to achieve that level. Now I'll go to the next question by Yakuba Traore on business acumen. Do you think it is education contents that need to be changed, or the way it is delivered, learning approach and methodology? Mandy, are you online?
I am here, Evelyn, and happy to take that one. I think the question for me is not only relevant to business acumen, but to the behavioral competencies and the technical competencies as well. There is some educational content that needs to change, but I think fundamentally a lot of what we want to achieve will be mostly impacted by the way the learning is delivered. So, for example, if you continue to focus on imparting knowledge and content is really important, then you may end up not sufficiently developing skills. And skills need to be developed through repeated and ongoing practice, rather than you can take away a textbook, go and read it, learn it, and regurgitate it. So I do think that, and I do believe we've already had this opportunity handed to us on a golden plate through COVID, because COVID forced educators to think very differently about how they deliver their programs. And for me, it really is just a continuation of exploring, how differently things can be incorporated into an academic program, a professional program, an education program. For me, I do think that there's a lot more that can be done in that particular space. I think it's easy to change content, but it's not that easy to change the way you teach. And I think the other thing is to make sure we're teaching principles rather than focusing on the absolute knowledge, because that changes so rapidly. And that's where, lifelong learning comes in and is so important. Are we really developing self-directed lifelong learners? And how do you do that? I think the other area for me, and it's one I don't have a specific answer for, but it's one I wonder about all the time, is that there's a lot of talk about mindset as opposed to a skill or knowledge or an attitude. And I wonder if we have a deep enough understanding as educators of how to develop and influence somebody's mindset towards what we're talking about with regards to sustainability. I think the younger generation, the people we are teaching to be professional accountants into the future, have a deeper understanding than we do as educators of this concept of sustainability. I think our bigger challenge is going to be in engaging with our members. And as an example, I was on a call earlier where one of the professional bodies spoke up and said they did a survey among their members, and they listed a whole lot of areas where they asked members, what is your top priority in terms of ongoing learning and development? And it was sad for me to hear that sustainability was last on the list. So, I think we need to find innovative ways to speak to our existing members about how they can embrace these changes that we are moving towards. So that doesn't talk about learning pedagogy and learning methodologies, but really I think more to actually reaching our members and actually getting them to embrace this. For me, that's a critical area. Thanks, Evelyn.
Thank you, Mandy. The key takeaways for me in your response is the teaching of principles more, because principles will guide you in life when you come through situations and diverse circumstances. I also kind of agree with you that we may not have a big problem to deal with the upcoming accountants, the younger generation. The younger generation seems to be more aware of the environment and the need to be in tandem with the environment. But yet the leadership in all society, in all organizations, is with us that qualified long time ago. So CPD is very important to make sure that our attitudes, to use your words, Mandy, are more towards sustainability of the planet, people and prosperity, as we call it. So I will go on to the next question from Jeffrey Kirenga. He says, how are we going to protect auditors for these additional ethical risks because of massive data that some of them may not be validated within the period that auditors are required to opine? Something needs to be done. Many are likely to run away from the profession with additional risk. So this is an ethical question, Dr. Innocent. Do we have enough guidance in the education standards about how accountants accept assignments? And do you think indeed there's this risk, which one of our participants is talking about, that they are probably going to accept to deliver assignments not within the time they can deliver? Over to you, Dr. Innocent.
Okay, I think that's an important question that has been raised. And I think also this ties in with the new auditing standard that is being developed, which Bruce made reference to in his presentation. I guess that will bring a lot of clarity on how the accountant will deal with the additional ethical issues that will arise as a result of the massive data, and not just massive data, but the nature of the information. Like when I spoke, I talked about the sustainability information being soft information, being future-oriented. When I spoke to the big four firms in UK that are already engaging in sustainability, they talked about the challenge of assuring sustainability information. One of them gave me a response in a very succinct, short sentence, and he says, "You cannot assure the future. You can't assure the future unless you are."
Is it only me, or did I lose Dr. Innocent?
Yeah, he's dropped off, unfortunately.
Okay, so let's go. Unfortunately, indeed, that was his area. There's a question here: how do we reconcile the role of the accountant to that of the professionals driving sustainability initiatives as frontline? Could they not benefit from the ethics module? Again, that is an ethics question, but my panelists are not specific. Mandy, are you able to deal with that question?
Let me see. Not quite sure I understand the question. But
can I rephrase it? Can I rephrase
it
differently?
Rephrase it, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so the question is, as we report on sustainability, we are going to work with the other professionals, probably environmentists and whatever, but we have got an ethical code and a framework through which we think through. How are we going to marry the way we work and the way we work through things to the others? And it also speaks to what Dr. Innocent just said. Somebody said you cannot assure the future, but the issue is if there's a report, it can be assured. So how do we work with, in short, diverse professionals to deliver confidently or to assist to deliver value in the sustainable space? I hope I've simplified or
yeah,
more complicated better.
I will try and answer. Look,
Evelyn, I'm back.
oh, he's back. Shall I will pause then and then Innocent carry on.
Yeah, okay.
Happy to come in later.
Dr. Innocent, as you continue your
Okay.
question, we want you to combine with this question which says, how are we going to work with other professionals who may not have the same values and the same framework through which we think through things to deliver sustainable reporting? Because in the sustainable space, it is very clear we are going to work with other professionals.
Okay.
On the
Okay.
ethical side, yeah.
All right. Okay, so let me just conclude on the other bit I was talking about. So
Yes.
that way through which the accountant navigates the sustainability space is the level of assurance that is provided for sustainability information. As we know, there is a full assurance and there's limited assurance. And so when that guideline on sustainability assurance comes up that Bruce talked about, I think there will be provisions in that respect as to what the accountant would do under different circumstances. But I have also taken time to look at sustainability reports that have been presented at the moment, though not in line with IFRS S1, IFRS S2, but maybe using GRI. And we've discovered that when professional accountants assure sustainability reports, they tend to limited assurance, as opposed to non-professionals that will always give full assurance. So, you know, the conservative nature of accountants will make them to navigate such a space. So the accountant are equipped to deal with the sustainability risks that will arise when he engages in sustainability assurance. Now, on the other bit about working with professionals who don't have our value, the accountant already has a skill in working with other professions, and that is making use of the work of an expert. And there are clear guidelines of what the accountant should do when he makes use of the work of an expert. And the expert could include professionals from other professions, which the accountant will look at as. And so even within this sustainability, there is a group of professionals that are rising up. They call themselves sustainability professionals. And sustainability professionals could be people who are just experts in environmental issues, experts in issues around carbon emission, around water, and such issues. And they are experts that the accountant is going to rely on to do his work. Again, when I spoke to the Big Four in UK, what they are saying is we are not competing with other professionals. We welcome them. And they say that even the information they provide in sustainability are provided by other professions, scientists, engineers, environmentalists. All of them provide the information with which the accountant is going to work. So it is working cooperatively, and that is also a skill that the accountant has already did, but is now going to refine it more because he is now exposed to more professionals while he is in his sustainability engagement, unlike what previously everything used to be financial. So same skill sets, but more varied and more widespread for the accountant. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Innocent. It's interesting that when I
Evelyn, over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Innocent. It is interesting that when we look through the questions, the issues to do with ethics and behavior competences are very, very numerous, which means that's an area that we really need to look through in the education space, and even the standards and how we help our accountants to have the right behaviors and ethical competence to deal with sustainability reporting and assurance. Now, there are a few other questions in English, but I have a question from Sid Ahmad Gouberry in French. I want to ask our interpreter if he is able to just talk to us that question in English. We'll come back to the other English questions. Is our interpreter able to access the question and answer?
sector so that that can be applied correctly.
Please.
Have you tried to think about sharing experience and the knowledge? Can you hear me?
Yeah, but I beg your pardon, we have to ask you to say that again.
Okay, can you hear me?
At least on my side, yeah. I can hear you now.
Okay.
Please come again with the question in English.
All right. So he's saying that, have you put in place some types of files in the educational sector that can be applied correctly? And the second question is, have you planned to share experience and knowledge for the so that the application would be correct?
Okay.
That's the question.
Over to
Okay,
you.
so that question I would like to ask either PAFA or IFAC to respond, because it's talking to the standard setters. Or let me start with Bruce. This question is similar to the question that was asked earlier on about what have you done already? So the question is, do you have anything that you have in terms of initial professional development that can assist sustainability as well as practical experience in sustainability? Do we have already?
So I mean, from our FAC side, nothing specific, and that's part of why we're going on this journey and on this project, and to give to give guidance to those in the education sector to be able to consider how they might revise their curriculum. I think what is important to note, though, even though our FAC is currently in the process of doing this, there are many of our members around the world and we heard from Mandy, who's already shared, and we've heard from Innocent and Isaac, but there are many of our members around the world who are already adapting their curriculum, who are already offering some CPD courses, some specializations, but also some who've been making changes to their curriculum. So that's what we're learning from, and of course the work we will do will try to be able to state that at principal level as learning outcomes for the community to use going forward. I do just want to say one thing on the issue of practical, the application of practice, and this is one of the big challenges with this, is that it's an emerging area. So although sustainability reporting has been happening for decades in different forms, in terms of the current structure and in terms of it becoming mandatory in so many jurisdictions, that is something new. And that's going to mean that more and more accountants are going to be doing this type of work. But it's also going to mean that as we all start to do this in practice, we need to be making sure that whatever lessons we're learning, that's been fed back into the education community, so they can benefit from that reality. So just, I think, getting this cycle going from the very beginning to make sure that the education community is connected to what is a evolving or emerging area is going to be really, really important, and that we find mechanisms to make sure that what we're teaching in the classroom is keeping up with what's happening in reality. You know, and some of these ethical issues are great examples. If there's, you know, dilemmas that people are facing in the space that aren't necessarily things that are in the classroom right now, in the case studies that are used there, let's make sure we tell those stories and bring it back into the curriculum. I see there's a couple of other hands as well, so you're happy for the others to contribute.
Thank you, Bruce. We'll ask Atta, CEO of PAFA, to talk, and afterwards, Dr. Innocent.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. I'm just thinking back to day one, Monday. We had the ISSB IFRS Foundation present. What's really impressive about the IFRS Foundation work in this area is that they not only focused on standard setting, but very, very much also concerned about capacity building and working very closely with PAFA to determine how best we can help Africa. And we will soon start working with them to develop a strategy, a 3-year strategy for Africa. But what I want to remind you, and if you can look back, my colleague Sibongile has already circulated the slides of Monday. IFRS Foundation will soon launch a knowledge hub. And in the knowledge hub, I think there is going to be a lot of capacity building type information. Not only what they are producing, the Knowledge Hub is almost going to be like the IFAC Knowledge Gateway, where they are going to bring together everything that is available. And so just keep your eye on it. I mean, if you go on the IFRS Foundation website, you can actually register to receive sustainability reporting related updates. So do that, because I think soon we're going to have a really good compilation of what is already available. Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Dr. Innocent, and then after Mandy.
Okay. All right. So I just want to share experience of how we have incorporated sustainability in our IPD in the Institute of Chartered Accountants. So we didn't take it to be a single subject. What we is to distribute sustainability as it relates to certain subjects or modules. So we have it in financial reporting. We have sustainability in corporate reporting. We have sustainability in audit and assurance, and as well as advanced audit.
Thank you, Mandy.
I just wanted to add that, you know, one of the best ways of learning is actually to learn from each other. So, you know, forums such as this, the forums that IFAC hold, and Alta's referred to
our accountants are already involved in the practical experience in their workplaces.
Dr. Innocent, you had dropped off. I thought you had finished. I'm sorry, there was a disturbance. So Mandy, we will ask Dr. Innocent to finish, and then you come back, because it appears he didn't finish his talking. Sorry, I think the internet was down. You can come in, Dr. Innocent.
Oh, okay. All right, sorry. So company is engaging in sustainability reporting. If your company is already engaging in sustainability reporting, there's a tendency that the accountant is going to be involved. So when I interviewed some accountants in Nigeria on their role in sustainability, we have quite practical experiences of those that are involved in one way or the other in sustainability. So for instance, issues around waste, issues around water. In fact, waste disposal in one company, a brewery company, was turned into a profit-making venture. But before, it used to be something that they litter in the street and cause environmental damages. But it took an accountant that got involved in sustainability knowledge to then tell them that, look, some of this waste can actually be packaged into something that other companies can buy and then use it as their raw material. And he gave a vivid example of, so one way or the other, the accountants are already having some practical experience with sustainability, depending on what your organization is at the moment. Thank you.
Mandy, over to you.
Evelyn, I think I was finished, but just to reiterate, the value of collaboration and forums like this where people are exchanging. We really do learn from each other. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we have other questions in the chat, but they are much similar to what has been discussed already. I think the context remains the same. I will just ask my panelists to give their final remarks, 2 minutes each, and then we'll ask Bruce and Atta to close the session. Sorry, Atta, is your hand still up? Okay, so Atta, yeah, you can come.
Sorry, Evelyn, you are asking me to talk about, to do the closing remarks? Sorry.
No. I'm sorry.
No,
Your hand was
it's
still
an
up.
old hand. It's an old hand. I'm so sorry about that. Sorry.
Okay.
It's
not yet,
literally an old.
but just be on alert. We are coming to a conclusion. I will ask my panelists to just do final 2 minutes each. I will start with Mandy, Isaac, and then Dr. Innocent. Yeah, Mandy.
Evelyn,
few final observations.
my final observations are that this is an emerging area, which I think is the right direction. It presents many opportunities for us as accountants, and we need to embrace this. And of course, this session being focused on education, we have a unique opportunity to look at how we can do that, both in the pre-qualification space and in terms of probably the more challenging area, engaging with our members. So a lot, I think we've given a lot to think about today. I think my advice to you is, the longer you think about it, the easier this becomes. Trust me. It's maybe difficult to get your head around a few things at the beginning, but once you embrace that mindset change, it actually becomes really easy. Good luck to all the colleagues out there in terms of thinking about how this can best be implemented in your areas. Thanks.
Thank you, Mandy. I like that change is difficult at the beginning, but when you get into it, you roll and you manage. So we will master this area of sustainability. Isaac, what is your final remarks?
Thank you, Evelyn. Sorry, I'm not able to put my video on. I have some internet instability. Now, sustainability is here with us, and we need to embrace and move on with it. But even as we talk about sustainability reporting, we have to start from the base, and the base is an appreciation of what sustainability is. It is important that accountants see that they have a role to play, they have a responsibility to play in terms of enhancing sustainability. And that way, they will be able to look at their value addition and be able also to integrate and consult and work with other professionals. From a technical competence perspective, there's need to relook at our learning outcomes. There's need to look at the competencies for professional accountants, because as they are now, they have not fully incorporated sustainability reporting, sustainability risk and opportunities, and also sustainability assurance. So there is a clear gap there, requiring a relook at our competencies and also at our learning outcomes. My personal view, looking at the broad nature of sustainability, it's a new area, it's emerging and it is growing, is that perhaps there's need for a new IES purely focused on sustainability reporting, because this is an area that is growing and is going to, the focus on sustainability is going to grow as we move forward. Finally, the value addition aspect of sustainability reporting should not be forgotten. It is not just about disclosure. It is not just about incorporating figures on sustainability in the financial reports. All this has an end result, and the end result is the value addition that sustainability is bringing. So accountants have to appreciate that there's a value addition, and they have to be able to demonstrate to investors and other stakeholders that there is a real value addition from sustainability reporting. Thank you. Back to you, Evelyn.
Thank you, Isaac. You confirm that there is need to look at our learning outcomes, our competences, and definitely you are sure that we need to improve IES. And you have a suggestion of a new IES. I think Bruce has heard you and we have all heard you. Thank you very much for that technical input to this discussion. Over to you, to Dr. Innocent, for your final remarks.
All right, so I want to start by reminding us that sustainability reporting was in a state of confusion in the landscape in which it was operating. We had multiple frameworks, each telling you to report according to how they feel is the best. Companies were also getting confused on what to report, given the various metrics that each of the different providers of sustainability frameworks were providing. And it is in the midst of these confusion, sustainability reporting landscape that is confused, institutional investors and stakeholders want a more standardized information that addresses sustainability risks and opportunities. IFAC invited the IFRS Foundation and accountants to come and lead. There is a general feeling out there that I have a huge role to play in sustainability space. In the critical accounting academic world, a question has been asked whether the environment and people are safe in the hands of accountants. Others have come up with the view that only the accountant can save the planet. These are different thinkings that beckon on the accountant to come and take his rightful role in advancing sustainability. Today, huge progress has been made with the coming on board of ISSB, who is now leading to provide a minimum benchmark of the type of information that we should disclose to measure sustainability performance of businesses. And today we are discussing the kind of skills and competencies that accountants need to develop in order to play that rightful role. It is obvious that there is a need for us to revisit both our IPD curriculum, in which case we're looking at the IES that address both the technical competence, the behavioral competence, and the ethical and ethics of the accountant. Ethical dilemma facing the accountant is likely going to increase in the face of venturing into sustainability. So I will call on all accountants to rise up to the occasion, because society wants you to lead in this space. And you have not fallen short in moments like this. So let accountants seize the moment and lead as all stakeholders expect the accountant to lead in sustainability space. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Innocent, for that call for each one of us to take the lead in this space. I personally will use the I can slogan, I can. We'll be able to do it. Each one of us can. Thank you very much. Now we are into the closing session. Bruce, I'm sorry, I'll give you exactly 4 minutes so that Atta can also speak with you, just your observations and key statements that you want to say to the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Evelyn. I probably don't need 4 minutes, but just firstly, huge gratitude to everyone at PAFA for organizing the event today and for the amazing participation. So great to see so many people online and so many people staying online throughout the discussion. So I hope you found value. Certainly from my side, it's incredibly helpful to hear these conversations, and all of this will, of course, feed into the decision-making that we're doing at IFAC with the International Panel on Accountancy Education to decide our way forward. My parting thought would be, the first step to learning is knowing what you don't know. And this is an area where I really think as accountants, we need a good dose of humility. We certainly have a fantastic foundation to build on, but there is a lot to learn, and there's a lot to develop. And we're going to be working. The other area of having a dose of humility is this idea of working with other professionals. And I know it's been alluded to a few times today that this has been almost positioned as a either it's going to be the consultants or it's going to be us. To be honest, if you look at what's happening, particularly in the larger firms and the way that are already providing sustainability assurance type services, it's not an either or, it's actually a combination, because they've brought in experts who are working with the accountants together on teams. And so I think we need to get ourselves prepared for that type of working, and to recognize that these are experts who have important contributions to make. Certainly we've got something to share with them, but likewise in the other direction. And probably the solution to saving the world is going to be collaboration, not an either or. So that's my final thought, and thank you so much for the event today.
Thank you, Bruce. Over to you, Atta, for closing.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. What an exciting time to be an accountant. I mean, we couldn't have asked for better. And we have been on an amazing journey over the past 4 days and on a pathway to prosperity. We started off on Monday and we focused on sustainability reporting, paving the way to African economic success. We had experts here from ISSB and IFRS Foundation, and we spoke both about reporting and, as I've said earlier, also building the necessary capacity. From there, on the following day, we went to the public sector, looking at greening government, navigating the path to sustainability, to sustainable public sector practices. And here we were joined by experts from IPSASB and others from across the continent, and learned a lot about green financing and also the importance of public-private partnerships. From there, another wonderful day. Yesterday, we moved to assurance, building trust, the power of sustainability assurance. Here we welcomed experts from IFAC as well as the IAASB. And then today, someone just posted here in the chat, what an amazing way to close the 4 days. So today we are looking at how to mainstream sustainability in learning and development. We welcomed presenters from IFAC and across the continent, and you did an amazing job. So for me, what is left is to thank all our experts who shared their valuable advice with us, but to also thank you, the participants, for staying with us and for your questions and contributions. And also, important, my team, for a great 4 days. Thank you for your diligence and for your contribution and for your passion. It is really much appreciated. So I will leave you with this one thought: stay curious, because that is how we will manage lifelong learning and how we will remain relevant. So again, an amazing time to be an accountant. Go back, reflect on this, and continue this conversation wherever you are. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the day. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everyone. It was my pleasure anchoring this session. The session is closed. Thank you.